Just want to check with Kelly on attendance, who we have. I mean, quorum's one thing, but are we expecting others to join here today?
I haven't received any regrets, Chair. Councillor Harder and Councillor King aren't on yet.
Councillor Harder won't be on. She said
okay.
regrets to me, which I guess is something. So,
and so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we don't have quorum yet. So because of the confusion, Caitlin's on the other Zoom link and redirected. Yeah, we normally don't have 2 meetings at the same time, and I missed that AAC was meeting tonight, so we both created meetings with the one account.
Hi, Kelly. This is and Chair Moffat. This is Caitlin. Just to let you know, I've sent a few members of the public over to watch at the new Zoom link, and I think a couple of Councillor Tierney as well, likely joining. I redirected them, so I'll still be here in the other Zoom meeting as required to move people over.
Okay, so I've got Mohammed here. I've got Carolyn, Tom, David, Corlia. Yeah, you're right. So I know Brad Smith's an unlikely attendee, just given the reality of living in Burris Rapids. Aileen is usually in attendance. I think Shannon Bass is usually in attendance. And Claude Schellenberg is usually in attendance. Ferry is, I think, has missed a couple, but she's usually here. So hopefully 1 or 2 of them show up shortly so we can actually start.
And Councillor Moffat, Kelly may have already mentioned this before I rejoined this call, but if after 15 minutes from the start time you don't have quorum, you can still proceed as an informal meeting so that the members that are in attendance could receive the presentation. And I think that would be an option to you.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
and I will certainly be online on the other meeting until at least that time to make sure any stragglers are able to move over.
Okay. I mean, in reality, it's only information to be received anyway, so it's not exactly any formal acceptance of policy. But like, you know, not shocking to anyone, we aren't approving LRT phase 3 tonight, so if we don't have quorum, it's not the end of the world, right? Mm-hmm. I was going to walk on a motion, but send it right down Bank Street, right to Lansdowne. Carolyn, like, yes.
Punt. That'd be a good punt.
There you go. Yep.
40-story towers to Lansdowne, courtesy of LRT.
I think we should bury it in the canal. Drain the canal, dig a little deeper. Bring it right down that way.
And then pour the water back on top of it.
Yeah.
Since it's electric, maybe that'll work too, you know.
Yeah.
Use the electricity for hydro. I think historically the last serious proposal to turn the canal into a road was from the mid to late 1920s, and it was never heard of again.
Did anyone tell them that there's actually roads on either side of the canal?
Maybe that's what did it.
Probably. Some realization, but hey, did you guys know there's actually roads already here? We can just use those. I've always felt the combination of Kerneby and Queen Elizabeth would make like the best F1 track.
You've been watching Netflix, obviously, Scott.
It's got me addicted. So I used to watch F1 as a kid, like in my teens. So went back when Jacques Villeneuve was racing, and then I got away from it. And then I watched that Drive to Survive. I probably binged all 3 seasons within like just a couple weeks, and now I'm like glued. I'm watching the practice runs. I'm watching the qualifying. Like everything. I'm like listening to the F1 podcast with Damon Hill. Like I just can't. Netflix has absolutely wrapped me in to F1. I think F1 did it by design.
It's the algorithm. It's
I
the
know, I had no interest previously, but I'm into it now myself.
It's captivating. It's wild.
Chair, you have quorum now. Shannon
Fantastic.
Bassett joined, so you have 7 members.
I even have some counselors here. Holy jeez, look at us. Look at us, everyone. Be on your best behavior because I know they are. Okay, so I will call the meeting to order. Jeff's giving a thumbs up to the sky, but I don't know what that was. They come on from time to time and just show their faces, but all right. So welcome to the 6th meeting of the Planning Advisory Committee, our special meeting on June 15th. So we will do a quick roll call just so that we have proper attendance as to who's here. So I'll allow Kelly to run through that.
Okay, Councillor Hardison regret, Councillor King, I don't see, Member Bassett. I believe I let you in.
Yeah.
Okay. Member Duncan, Member Issa, Member Kirkpatrick, Member Mackenzie. Okay, I'll let you in.
Yeah, Carolyn's here.
Okay. Member Moss,
Yep.
Member Renfro,
President.
Member Claude Schellenberg, Member Smith, and Member Tarachuk. I'm sorry if I spelled that wrong.
Perfect, Tarasiuk. Thanks.
Okay. You have quorum, Chair.
Okay, thank you so much. So we have one item on today's agenda, and it is a report on the interim official plan, the As We Heard It report. So this was just released last week to members of council. I believe the members of the committee received it at around the same time, if not shortly after. So we're here today to receive a presentation on that report and to have any questions or discussions around that. And this all leads into the next draft of the official plan, which comes to committee and council this fall. So I assume I've got Doug James here, I've got Alain Migueles, and I have Charmaine Forgy here as well. I know Alain was requesting host status so he could share his screen. So if we can do that. And Leanne Seddon, of course, is here as well.
I have the presentation, but I'd be happy if Elaine wants to do it. I can give him privileges. Hang on.
It probably avoids him from saying next slide 80 times.
Not that I have 80 slides, but yeah, it'll go smoother.
Okay, I just gave it to you, so you should be good.
All right, Alain, you have, as per regular committee rules, you have 5 minutes.
Thanks very much, Chair. It's okay. I'll start right now then. Okay, so we are here to give you an update on what we've heard from the public consultation that surrounded the draft of the new official plan. As you remember, on November 20th of last year, we issued the first copy of the draft, or the first version of the new official plan. And that was basically put out there for public consultation. It was also distributed for technical circulation to all internal departments, all partner agencies, the City of Gatineau, National Capital Commission, federal departments and ministries, conservation authorities, school boards, etc., utilities, and so on. And, you know, we received a tremendous amount of correspondence and feedback, technical feedback and public feedback. So this presentation will touch on the overall themes that we heard citywide and give you a flavor of some of the changes that we'll be making to the next version of the new official plan. And there will be as well additional reports with the As We Heard It focused on each ward. So 23 of them in addition to the citywide. And then starting next week, we have a series of evenings, one for each transect, where residents have an opportunity to talk to us planners about all the items in the As We Heard It report and ask us questions about their neighborhoods. I'll turn it over to Charmaine for an overview of the consultation.
Thank you, Ellen, and thank you, Chair. And so for the engagement tactics, as Ellen mentioned, we have received a lot of feedback. I think it was over 1,500 feedback. Each piece of feedback is being tracked and has been responded to. We have used a variety of different engagement tactics, and they have been very successful. We have reached over 100,000 residents in our engagement pieces. We've a variety of pieces. We're using a website. Our Engage Ottawa has had a lot of traction. Surveys, community meetings. We started back in 2019 when we get to see people in person, and now obviously we've moved on to online. We've done advertisements. We started with bus ads, and since the pandemic, I only purchased for 6 months, but no one's changed them. And so they're still in all the, if anyone's out on the roads, the buses are still wrapped about the OP. So the awareness is still there. We've done news articles, op-eds, public events, short videos, and social media. So a variety of techniques ensuring that we're meeting all the different needs of diverse groups, ensuring that everyone has a voice and the opportunity to participate. This map shows the different, it's hard to see, or maybe it's my eyes, shows all the different areas that there has been engagement opportunities. So you'll see that the red, it shows that the most because it's most dense, but we have been able to engage a lot of the different, like the rural, we did a lot of outreach with the rural. We did the survey for the 15-minute neighborhood, which it was done in August. And as Alain will mention, cannabis, we're on a race, who would win the cannabis survey or the 15-minute neighborhood, and we're still tallying the results. We had over 4,000 response, and we did that in last August. So a great turnout for the different engagement pieces. Over to you, Alain.
Thanks, Charmaine. And actually, just looking at this map, you'll notice that we actually got responses from outside the city of Ottawa, which including in Chelsea and Gatineau and North Grenville, Mississippi Mills, Beckwith, Russell. So I mean, it goes to show I guess the deep affection that people have for Ottawa, even outside our boundaries. So these are some of the themes that we heard. And I think, the biggest one had to do with the biggest change that we were introducing, which is introducing the transects into the mapping of the official plan. As you remember, the transects are the concentric circles that outline different areas of the city based on context. And we had a few, dozens of pieces of feedback asking about why certain areas were contained in one transect area as opposed to another. And what we ended up doing is revising the boundaries of the transect to be more faithful to the era of construction of neighborhoods, which is something that people have an easier time relating to in terms of the logic of mapping. So the inner urban transect got a little smaller. It now really contains the neighborhoods between 1900 and 1950, roughly. And the outer urban transect got a little larger because it now also includes neighborhoods that were built roughly after 1950. This includes the Alta Vista neighborhood, as well as the old Nepean neighborhoods and the old City of Ottawa neighborhoods south of Baseline. And when you get to Maryvale, west of Maryvale on both sides of Baseline. There were concerns with another innovation that we've introduced, which is overlays. We had two overlays, the transforming overlay and the evolving overlay. Both were important. Our official plan is going to be much more focused on built form and public realm and much less on land use. So we want the shape of the city to be right, context by context. And the overlays were there to guide the evolution from one to another or to reinforce, in the case of the urban typologies of buildings and site designs. So what we've done is we got rid of the transforming overlay, and the policies that used to be there are just embedded in the downtown and inner urban transects. So the policy stays, but it's a little easier to read. And then the evolving overlay stays, and the evolving overlay now will be mapped based on proximity to hubs and corridors. We felt, and we heard from people, that would be easier to understand, as well as to, where does the city and where does the official plan call for gradual change in character, and that's based on hubs and corridors. There was a lot of, concern about our minimum density requirements for neighborhoods. A lot of people felt that they were too high. and we had another look. Obviously, the other side of this ledger is that we need to make the numbers contained in the growth management strategy, which is approved by council and goes hand in hand with our urban expansion package. So we've been able to recalculate, and basically, I mean, the draft official plan was, had numbers that made the math work, but they were very coarse. We reanalyzed the numbers that we need to have in the official plan based on implementation. And for that, we enlisted the help of our colleagues in zoning, and we started to work on how they would take this information and start to roll it out in neighborhoods. So what we ended up with are minimum density requirements now become targets. They're no longer expressed as a single number, they're expressed as a range. So within that range, zoning will have the ability to capture different contexts and be sensitive to variations neighborhood by neighborhood. And related to that, the ability to rebuild single family homes. I mean, the minute we go to targets instead of requirements, that is a non-issue now. So people would have the ability to tear down a single family home and replace it with another one in neighborhoods. There were people who were calling for a reversal of the decision to expand the urban boundary. Obviously, we are bound by a council and its approval of the growth management package. There was a call to remove major office as a permitted as of right thing that you can do in the heart of a neighborhood, and we did remove that. A lot of feedback on affordable housing. So the OP, we were told, needs to do more for affordable housing. On that one, we did two things. One, I mean, obviously, we are getting a lot of feedback, and from other quarters, we're getting pressure to do the opposite. So what we are not doing is we are not walking away from the focus on affordable housing that we feel is very important and needs to stay in the official plan. We go much further than the current official plan in a couple of ways. One is providing more housing choice and diversity of home types across more neighborhoods, and that's part of the intensification target. And another one is that we have a whole section now that talks about affordability, not just like the deep affordability as we used to only focus on, which is up to the 30th income percentile, but we now also talk about the 30th to 60th income percentile. And that also sets up the zoning to provide opportunities for more flexible types of homes, especially in existing neighborhoods where we know the land is expensive already. There were questions about some of the words that we were using. So regeneration, there was some pushback on that word because it came with connotations from the 60s that were not always, appreciated. The use of the word appropriate, the use of the word consistent. So we did a couple of updates. We are no longer using the word regeneration. I think people understood the word intensification. That's what the provincial policy statement uses. So we're going back to it. We clarified whenever we say appropriate, we gave more language to say appropriate in relation to what, and consistent, that word's been taken out of the official plan altogether. We use more descriptive language. So if we mean better integrated with the streetscape, then that's what we say. There was a piece of feedback that said that, we should stop intensification until we have all the infrastructure, all the transit, all the amenities. And the reality of the matter is we don't really have any tools to do that, even if we wanted to. There's no mechanism under the Planning Act or the Municipal Act that would allow the city to refuse a building permit based on not having enough supporting infrastructure or transit or amenities or services in a general vicinity. But in general, and when we look at how cities are built, these things have to go hand in hand. The official plan does a much better job at recognizing that with increasing population, neighborhoods will need services to keep up. And the existing official plan was pretty silent on that. But the new official plan is a lot more explicit. And this is something that we're going to continue to review. Basically, what we want is to synchronize infill and intensification and increases in population with the levels of services that the city provides and the permissions that we provide for the private sector to support neighborhoods. On permissions to the private sector, obviously we've got a lot more in this official plan. And on the other departments, well, we've been talking a lot more with transportation, with infrastructure, with parks and facilities, with community and social services, with libraries, with the school boards. A lot of these departments and other stakeholders are getting mapping from us and are getting population projections from us, so they can start to also plan their facilities in the future in accordance with our projections. A lot of questions on minor corridors. So we have explained in the As We Heard It report and in the revised version of the official plan what a minor corridor is meant to be and what it's not meant to be. A lot of people were scared that minor corridor designation would mean we're going to widen the road. That's not what it means. A lot of people were concerned as well that minor corridor meant that we want to transform that street into like a commercial alignment, like a continuous commercial main street. And that's not the case either. Minor corridors are basically just more important streets in a neighborhood. They're the road in and out of the neighborhood. That's usually where you would find bus routes that feed into stations. And those are the streets where we can start to put in the seeds of 15-minute neighborhoods in areas where they don't exist yet. It'll take time. It'll be a different way in each neighborhood, but that's the idea of minor corridors. An interesting one, a lot of people told us you're not making as good a use of your main streets as you could. So have another look at your height limits. A lot of people qualified that immediately by saying traditional main streets, keep them the way they are, mid-rise. And so we're doing that. But for those wider main streets, you know, in the outer urban transit, in the suburban transit, the wider main streets, a new policy will propose to allow high-rise buildings on streets that are 30 meters or wider, but only in certain cases. You need a piece of land that's big enough to handle a building of that size, and you need to transition well to the houses in the back or on the side. So there's going to be qualifiers on that, but if you have a big piece of land, let's just say a shopping center, take Carlingwood Shopping Center, big piece of land, it's on a huge arterial, Carling Avenue, which is more than 30 meters wide. And why 30 meters, by the way? Well, 30 meters is also the height of what starts to be a 10-story building, which is a high rise. So there is a relationship between the space and the type of building you should be able to build if you have a piece of land that's big enough. Same for hubs, what we call mixed use centers. We're taking out the 12-story limit. It didn't make much sense to begin with. Most of the existing mixed use centers already have secondary plans that allow for taller buildings. And here we're replacing it just with a permission for high-rise buildings. Again, in the heart of the hub, high-rise buildings, and in the areas, you know, in the outer ring, abutting neighborhoods, you'll have that same approach that you need a piece of land that's big enough. GOBA, the Greater Ottawa Home Builders Association, is concerned with the incremental effects of policies. We keep adding new policies, and each policy is a requirement. It can add to the cost of housing. And again, affordability is a prime concern. Interestingly, GOBA is very vocal about their concerns on housing affordability. And they've been saying affordability is a good trump card for Ottawa. It's a competitive edge. We can compete with Toronto for workers and young people, and we need to stay an affordable city. We agree with them. So we're going to keep working with them to rationalize policies. And really what's happening with the official plan is the focus of our attention is going to different places. Like I said, we want to worry less about land use, which is what 20th century planning worried about a lot. We want to worry more about urban form, about the shape of buildings, about good public space. So in so much as we have new areas of interest and policy concern, at the same time, we want to liberalize on areas where we don't necessarily have as much a concern or a concern of the same type anymore. And we think that we'll get to something that will make sense. Stronger flood risk management. So again, we have revised policies to basically say that what we now call the climate vulnerable flood area is the 1 to 350 flood. Those are the more massive floods that would be triggered by significant climate change related weather patterns changing. The conservation authorities are working with us, and they've been mapping all this. Again, the statutory floodplain remains per the PPS, but we put the 1 to 350 there as a connection to our climate change master plan and our resiliency analysis. Better protection of tree canopy. So on this one, we think, and we would like the public to also see, that the new official plan actually goes much further. We're much clearer than the current official plan on the importance of protecting urban trees. We went from a 30% target to a 40% target. We want to work in concert with the new tree bylaw, and we have a few measures to protect trees in infill situations. A lot of desire to see 15-minute neighborhoods expand across the city. This has been one of the most popular themes in the official plan. Ironically, you're going to see that we have the expression 15-minute neighborhoods a lot less in the new official plan. We did a very thorough and surgical editing, and we had peppered that expression all over the place, perhaps a lot more than was necessary, but we've tightened it and we've clarified what we mean. So the official plan's intent is to support 15-minute neighborhoods and strengthen them where they exist. It is to help those neighborhoods that are just bubbling under and need a little more of a nudge to get there in the 25 years of the plan. And in areas that are not 15-minute neighborhoods, we want to plant the seeds for them so that the people who come after us and those who are doing the official plan after this one can pick up from there. There was the concept of the 18-hour city for suburban communities. Obviously, suburban communities are not 24-hour cities. So we have two policies that call for good connections from suburban areas into those parts of the city that function as 15-minute neighborhoods 24 hours. And also to increase transit service within suburban communities so that people in suburban communities can have better access to the stuff that's in their community as opposed to having to trek to downtown. I'll turn it over to Charmaine for these two items.
Thank you, Alain. So a theme about the engagement with our Indigenous communities, and our response is a commitment to work with the Indigenous communities throughout and beyond the new OP, and we will amend the policies when necessary. The Indigenous communities are an important partners, and we want to ensure that we take the time. They're not on our timeline, we're on their timeline. And so if necessary, we'll amend policies as we need to. We have reached out with all of the different Indigenous peoples and had initiated conversations, and will continue to do so. A theme did come about to extend the timeline for the adoption of the new official plan. The response is there will be no changes. The project timeline from the new official plan was determined by our elected representatives at City Council. So we do not have the authority to extend the timeline. Another theme that came out is not enough consultation with residents. We had multi-phases of engagement, and we've seen significantly higher numbers than any official plan update in the past. As mentioned, we've had over 100,000. The last official plan had approximately over 8,000. So 10 times, not 10,000, more than that, 10 times the amount of engagement. We've done over 100 different activities, and we've reached different demographics than we have reached before. I have to say, with the virtual engagement, we've reached a lot of our younger and families who can now pop in and while they're making dinner, reading the kids, putting them to bed, and they still can participate. So we've done that. I feel we've really had the opportunity, provide the opportunity to a lot of different demographics and different residents. Over to you, Alain.
Charmaine. A lot of people asked about the COVID-19 impacts on the official plan. Obviously, there's going to be a number of impacts that we'll need to gauge over time. There are a number of things that we're, keeping an eye on, and I can answer questions on that later if there are any. We were also referred to other plans, the older adult plan and other plans. And again, the next one, uncertain how the new official plan intersects with other master plans. So again, we have been working with the colleagues in various other service areas and departments to make sure that we coordinated with what their exercises were doing, align messaging with what they were saying, much more so than in previous official plans. In this particular official plan, I'm proud to note how well we've been working with transportation planning, with infrastructure planning, and with Parks and Rec. Not necessarily always seeing eye to eye, but seeing issues through to resolution so that we land as one city, one team on what the official plan is saying. So in terms of next steps, I don't know, Charmaine, if you want to cover this piece.
Sure. Thank you, Alain. So some next steps, as was mentioned at the beginning by Chair Moffat, we have released the citywide as we heard it report. I hope everyone's had the opportunity to look at it, and Alain and I have just gone through the highlights of it. This summer, the full updated draft policies will be released. They will be released in track changes, so people can see what changes have been made. It will be easier, plus we will have a clean copy as well. And the new official plan will be brought to the joint meeting of Agriculture and Rural Affairs and Planning Committee in the middle of September, and then to council in September as well. Thank you. We're continuing the public consultation. The project email that the new OP at ottawa.ca will remain open throughout the process. And as I mentioned, each item of feedback that we receive continues to be tracked and shared with our planners. They've been very good and very responsive to the questions and ensuring that all of the feedback is tracked and responded to. Next slide, please. And now one more pitch for what we're doing next week. We will have the ward-specific interim reports. We're getting those completed as fast as we can, and we would have coming next week. We do have our 5 different transect meetings. And if you go to ottawa.ca/the new OP, you will keep updated on all the engagement activities. Thank you.
Thanks, Charmaine. Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. Happy to take questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Alain. Thank you, Charmaine. Appreciate seeing that presentation for the 4th time, and always good to run through it. It feels like it's fresh and new every time. That's how good you are at doing it. But yeah, so happy to take questions. I see Councillor Kavanaugh has joined us here as well, so appreciate that. So we'll go straight to our members of the committee here. So David Renfro, you are first up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have 2 questions. One is there's supposed to be a statutory open house this summer. Is that still scheduled? That's my first question. If Charmaine, do you want to?
Yes, it is. We don't have the exact date for it. It will be towards the end of August, but it has to be, we're required to do it 20 days prior to the joint committee.
Okay,
For
perfect.
finalizing the date.
Thank you. I'm just asking to pass it on to the GOBA members. The other question through the chair probably for Elaine, I just if the minimum density requirements are changed from requirements to targets, are you still confident we're going to achieve the 60% intensification target?
Yes, I am. Obviously, I mean, it took a lot of analysis, and we looked at, well, first of all, right now we have targets, we don't have requirements. And with the targets that we have, we've surpassed our current intensification target, which is 40%. So with the changes that we anticipate in zoning after the adoption of the OP, we've calculated, and this was in, I think, one of the communications, there's about 178,000 eligible parcels of land in all the neighborhoods of Ottawa that could potentially be candidates for intensification. So out of 178,000 parcels of land, we need 49,000 dwelling units, big enough for large households, and 47,000 apartments, which probably will be mostly found near transit stations and on main streets. So I think we'll be all right. We did a number of stress tests on the math. We did a number of scenario calculations, and we do get there.
Thank you.
All right, that's it, David. Short and sweet, thank you. I have Carolyn McKenzie up next.
Great, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Alain team, for the presentation. I had a chance to go through the as we heard a report. I do have first a couple of quick questions, and then I have some comments, if that's okay. So very quickly, maps for transects, are they available? I know that the schedules, the dates for those transect meetings are up on the Engage Ottawa site. Are there maps available? Did I miss them? So that we actually know, now that the boundaries have been shifted, which residents will know which transect they actually live in? Are
Yeah.
they proposed to, will those be made available? That's a
So
quick question.
yes, the answer is yes. Charmaine and I are going to talk about this tomorrow morning. There is one small change we still have to make, and then we will make them available.
Okay, yeah, I think that's obviously important. You mentioned the ward reports they're coming out as soon as possible, so that's great. Looking forward to seeing those. Just some comments, I guess. The report doesn't make any mention of the many requests that I believe were made, and I can't say I read all of the submissions that were made to the planning department for the draft official plan, but I know that there were a lot of requests made for modeling to be shared. This is my, I feel like a bit of a broken record on this one, but I do think that it's important that residents and stakeholders can actually understand the assumptions and the math driving the density requirements and targets that the city is contemplating. I think, Alain, you mentioned, I've heard Stephen Willis quoted in some of the media articles as saying we can make our math work. And so that's great, but I guess my question is, where is the math and the explanation of those underlying assumptions? And why, if it's not being shared, why not? So that we can better understand the policies and the trade-offs being considered.
So I heard your comment. Yeah. So we do plan to release that. We just have to slot it in a calendar of releases. And right now, I think we're just focused on the As We Heard It reports. And we also want to get the draft official plan out into the public's hands as quickly as possible. But that information will be made available. Yeah.
Okay. Do we have, I know you, like, I have asked this for this before. It's obviously something that it's a tool, I assume, that's being used. If we don't get it until the updated version of the official plan comes out, it really doesn't leave, it becomes not terribly meaningful in terms of something that can be reviewed and, understood.
Well, I mean, we don't have a 3D model. That's not what we'll be releasing. It's a report with tables and math.
Yeah, no, that's what I understood as well. I'm just saying that if we don't see that until I don't know, I haven't actually heard a date, but sometime deep in the summer, it gives very little opportunity to review those numbers and, as I said, the assumptions, so that we have some sense of that. And I think I do think that that's important. Okay, shall I just? I don't know if there are other questions.
No, if you have other questions, can carry on for sure.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Just on the subject of the tree canopy targets, you mentioned, and I think the focus seems to be on the bylaws and the protection of trees, which I think is great. And there have obviously been some great policy improvements in that area. So I thank the city for that. And I think there's a lot of appreciation for the work that's been done there. I don't think, though, anyone's been asking for tree targets by street or by lot. But I'm wondering what the response is to why targets by neighborhood or even targets by transect would not be something that we would consider including. Things like the Marlborough Forest in the southwest corner of the city do not provide shade to pedestrians in Vanier or in the downtown area. And so if we just have such a global figure and our focus is on protection of what we have, what is that really going to do if I'm a resident in Vanier with hardly a tree to be seen in my neighborhood? So I guess that's your next question.
So maybe a couple of thoughts on that. And I would want my colleague Nick Stowe or Geraldine Wildman to be with me to add to this, but I'll do my best at representing what they explain. And we've talked to them quite at some length about this. They would find it very difficult and not very productive to have neighborhood by neighborhood targets. There's such variability in the context of each neighborhood, in the built form of each neighborhood, that the 40% number would not mean the same thing in each neighborhood. And it's a number, it's an aspirational number, it's a goal, but it allows the city to take certain measures to make sure that trees and viable trees are part of how we see full city building. Just to give you a bit of a bizarre example, you know, the NCC tells us, you know, don't count our land because it's not your land. We don't care if there's trees on it. Well, of course we count it. It's there. I mean, like, people don't make a difference between if it's NCC land or not NCC land, but it means that some wards that have a lot of NCC land may be artificially boosted in their percentage. And that shouldn't mean that we stop efforts on streets that still need the assistance. I'm thinking Councillor Leeper's ward, for instance, a lot of NCC land, but it's infill that devastates the tree canopy there. And what's needed there is vigorous measures to make sure that we're not losing the tree canopies along the streets. And if you take a measure of what's on the ground in Kitchissippi, you're probably at or surpassing 40%, depending if you take the NCC land or not. So those numbers are there more as a guide and not as an absolute target for each and every neighborhood. We can't hit 40% in the downtown core. It's pointless to even try. We're not going to start tearing down buildings, but we want the target to be there so that we're planting viable trees where we can get them. And that's pretty much the way that I think that target's meant to be understood.
Yeah, no, I certainly take your point. In the downtown area, 40% presumably is tough, if not absolutely impossible to achieve. I guess, is there not direction, and can we not include some direction in the official plan to even contextualize those targets for neighborhoods? So that,
and that's where
again, so that some neighborhoods are not being completely left behind.
Right, and I think that's where the work of the Parks and Green Space Master Plan can start to delve into that detail. Again, I mean, in the downtown core, if we're talking Le Breton, yeah, there's a lot we can do on Le Breton because it's pretty much an open field. But again, I mean, if we were to take the geography of the downtown core, we've got Colonel By Drive and Queen Elizabeth Drive, and a lot of NCC land. And if we hear the NCC, we're not supposed to calculate their land because it's not ours, it's NCC land. Well, again, of course, it's there, but it's at a location where, you know we have a healthy tree canopy already. The help that we would need in the downtown core is elsewhere. It's on the street trees that we plant into the cement, and we still need the soil to make them live.
Yeah. Okay, another big area, and as you mentioned, was the notion of the 15-minute neighborhood, which is certainly a topic that I've been spending a lot of time thinking about and discussing amongst communities across the city over the last while. What I'm wondering is, how does the city actually intend to develop context-specific focus in the zoning bylaw to ensure that development fits within a neighborhood's character? And I'm obviously reading from the language there. I think the goals and the aspirations are very solid, but what I don't see, and what I hope to see in the next version, would be direction or a high-level strategy for actually how this will be accomplished. We're seeing words like encourage and guide just in the response report, but I'm hopeful that we'll see more, again, sort of more focus on implementation and how practically speaking this will play out. I know that obviously the city did a very large survey, and Charmaine referred to it, of services and amenities across the city. And there was an info session, I think it was at the end of March, where that was reported on, which was great. But I guess my question would be, where is that material? Can the data from that survey not be made available? Was there a report that can be shared for that? I think if we're going to take this topic of how we advance 15-minute neighborhoods really seriously, we need to have more discussion and analysis of the topic, and I think the OP seems to me needs to have very strong enabling language for how we get at it. We need to better understand not only where food deserts exist, but also where service and amenity deserts, including neighborhood scale shops, parks, and green space are going to be enhanced in our neighborhoods. I personally support the idea that density levels are important, and they really must go hand in hand with enhanced services and amenities to create truly walkable or 15-minute neighborhoods. But I guess what seems a bit like a singular focus on density in this report, when we talk about 15-minute neighborhoods, it kind of reinforces the idea that a plan to properly understand the current status of services and amenities at the neighborhood level doesn't really exist. That we don't really have a vision of. I'm not saying we have to have all the details set and we have to have the absolute tool right in our hands, but again, what I'm looking for is that direction in the official plan. So we'll see what comes later. And I guess just finally, the report uses the term sort of balanced growth in a number of cases. And for neighborhoods that don't currently have density levels anywhere close to something that would support 15-minute neighborhood amenities, how is a general plan to add density, if we sort of backed off from focusing density, how is a general plan to add density with the exception of the hubs going to see us succeed in actually having more people living in 15-minute neighborhoods?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And that's probably what will be mostly the challenge in the outer urban and the suburban transect. In the suburban transect, we know also that typically most of those communities are too new to be expected to change significantly over the next 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
Change usually starts at about the 50, 60-year mark when generations start to move, new generations come in, people reinterpret the streets, the spaces, the buildings a little more. And the question then becomes, where do you seed the conditions for 15-minute neighborhoods? So what the plan does is, well, a number of things. We don't talk about residential areas anymore. Notice the semantic difference. Yep. We talk about neighborhoods. Why? Because neighborhoods are more than just residences. They should have parks and churches and schools and shops and services and the amenities. So when we talk about neighborhoods, we want the official plan to give direction for neighborhoods to have all these things self-contained. Let's not kid ourselves. I mean, neighborhoods, a lot of them inside the Greenbelt in what we call the outer urban have lost population since they were first built. In some cases, like more than half of the population. Neighborhoods that used to be, families of 4 or 5 kids have become neighborhoods of empty nesters. And so that's why schools have closed. That's why the buses don't run as much anymore. That's why stores and restaurants have closed. That's why, there's been a hollowing out. And those neighborhoods need repopulation just to get back to the level of services and amenities that they had and lost. And then we can start to rebuild again from there. And by then, the geographic reality will be that they will be more central. They will be more transit rich. They will be much more appealing. They will have history. People love neighborhoods with history. And the city is full of that. There's a real affection for established neighborhoods with identity, with place identity, with that personality. And then minor corridors. Minor corridors are the places where it's logical to start. We mapped a lot of new minor corridors, which correspond to good bus routes that feed into stations. And those are the ones where it's logical. Those are the streets where people end up when they're getting in and out of the neighborhood. And those are the ones that will collect the most foot traffic and bus traffic and bike traffic so that people can just walk to those streets for more than one or two reasons and end up there and start to seed the conditions for 15-minute neighborhoods that way. And again, it'll be a different answer in each neighborhood. And there's a lot that we want to give to the zoning bylaw team to be sensitive to context. We're basically, at an altitude where we're talking about the general ideas, we're putting in the policies to set the system in place, to set the stage for things to happen. But where the rubber really hits the pavement is in the zoning bylaw. And a lot of work will be done on that front.
Sorry, one last question, then I'll turn things over to others. Mid-rise rules and guidelines, we don't have them. It seems to me that given the likely role of mid-rise buildings on main streets and elsewhere in meeting growth targets, that this is going to be an issue for us as we think about how to contextualize those buildings so that they do fit in. And in the absence of those guidelines, I think, I see us getting into conflict, if I can put it so bluntly, as we see applications coming in that and the city doesn't necessarily have tools to really have discussions with developers about how to better massage those buildings and the massing so that they'll fit in. So that's a bit of a plea to the planning group, to the policy group, I should say, to consider prioritizing that.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Carolyn. And it's actually with our ROHUD colleagues. ROHUD is urban design. The UD is urban design, and they're the ones who develop urban design guidelines. And it is an identified gap that we have. We don't have mid-rise design guidelines, but it's on their work plan. We did quite a bit of interesting work with you guys in the Glebe, on Bank Street and the Glebe, and I think that'll be helpful to the group.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Carolyn. I will say just we have a pretty good study from 2019 on urban tree canopy that we did jointly with I think the NCC was involved too in the city of Gatineau. But it's interesting, right? Because there's one piece of it where it does a ward by ward analysis, and it has College Ward as being the top ward in terms of percentage, 48%, and Knoxdale Maryville is almost last. They're side by side. The reason is because College Ward contains the part of the green belt that has trees on it, and Knoxdale Maryville contains the part of the green belt that's farmed. So the percentage doesn't necessarily work. It doesn't mean that because College Ward is so high, we can just say, well, sorry, City View, we don't need to worry about you and your trees. It's still, it doesn't always work on that neighborhood breakdown or on that ward breakdown. That's kind of the point, I think, to the conversation before. I will just also, Alain's background music,
It's good.
the piano, it's a lot better than David Wise's constant pen clicking from the February 3rd meeting.
Mr. Chairman, that's my daughter. She plays the harp, and I'm trying to go on mute every time I'm not talking. So
No, that's
a
good.
harp?
Yeah,
Oh, well,
it's relaxing.
we should get your daughter at every council meeting from here on out.
she would love to play the anthem on harp for council, Councillor Moffat.
I am not in charge of council for the rest of this term, so you'll have to find someone that is, because that would be, if we ever get back in person, that would be amazing.
All right. Well, thanks for that. I'll pass it on to her.
I was going to say that I've asked the person to play the music similar to the Oscars. When you're going on too long, the music comes on, so you stop talking, but that's not accurate. Okay, we'll move on. So Tom Moss is up next.
I have a couple of questions for staff. It's my understanding that some of the community associations had some concerns about intensification as it would affect their streetscapes. How was that handled?
Well, we still have a policy of intensification, and really, basically, the only thing that means is that we need to have good rules that deal with what you do when you tear down a house. That's really what it is. That's really what it is. So if you tear down a house, and property owners are allowed to do that, what do we allow as a rebuild? Right now, the zoning has rules. It has your setbacks. It has your building height. Through the new official plan, we're giving more permissions for how many dwelling units can be in a particular building. And that's where the sliding scale of density ranges comes in. Densities are seen as minimums, and the maximums are controlled by building height and by setbacks. So there's two ways that we control, what gets rebuilt. We do want to focus more, as I said, on form, on the shape of the building, on building form, and on the type of development. That's why this new official plan has definitions for urban, for suburban. So you should not be building something suburban in an urban neighborhood, just like you should not be building something urban in a suburban neighborhood. But in areas where you're looking at a transition, we also want to start to talk about, well, how would you go from one to the other and still fit in? And no other city's done this, so we're going to be breaking new ground on this. There's a few things that we have said are absolutely important. One, neighborhoods are low rise, so that stays. Unless you've got zoning that allows, and we do have some neighborhoods with taller buildings, and that we're not taking anybody's rights away, but basically neighborhoods are low rise. Two, neighborhood streets are treed. In most Ottawa neighborhoods, you have the tree-lined streets, and we don't want to lose that. And one of the biggest eaters of street trees is driveways for infill. So we have new policies that will limit new driveways and curb cuts, and in some cases require shared driveways. And we've done that thousands and thousands of times in Ottawa and in many, many neighborhoods, and they work very well, all with the goal to maintaining enough plantable space in the front yard to have a green front yard and street trees. And the other one is the shape of the building. So that will be more in the zoning realm of things. But what our zoning colleagues have been doing in Westboro, notably, is a good indication of what could work in a lot of neighborhoods, or an approach that could be made to work in a lot of neighborhoods.
Mhm.
And we paid out of our own pocket all the images for the 613 flats to show a number of things. We wanted to show people it's possible to do a lot with low-rise buildings. You can do a lot. There's a lot of ways to slice the pie. There's a lot of ways to make sure that you get your trees. So we have that all calculated with enough soil volume that you can grow real trees, not toothpicks. There's a lot of ways that you can access with a car in cases where you're providing parking, and you can do it with a single entrance and locate your parking in a common location so that everybody has a parking spot, but you're not paving over the entire front yard. You're not turning the street into a parking lot and a sea of asphalt, because that's really what angers people, and they're right. And we heard them on that. So I would say those are the big three things that will really help us as a city get infill better, get infill that fits. You know, and I know that my neighbors here in Sandy Hill don't like it when I say this, but old neighborhoods that have been around for 150 years, you know, you walk down a street here in Sandy Hill and you'll see huge buildings. They used to have like 12 bedroom homes back then, big families. Nobody needs a 12 bedroom home, but nobody wanted those buildings to be torn down either. Those buildings got to live on because they're able to be apartments today. Nobody minds that there's 4 apartments. They just have the building. It's there. You can reuse it. So you can also add to an existing home and make that existing home, you know, keep up with the times, breathe better, adapt. And the official plan is allowing that too.
Okay, thank you. My second question is that once council approves the official plan in September, I'm assuming that this is going to trigger new zoning bylaws. Does staff know today or in the days to come, you know, what zoning bylaws are going to have to be changed and upgraded? And how does this get published to the citizens and to the communities?
Tom, I will say that we council actually approved a preliminary report on that zoning bylaw implementation. We're expecting it to take about 3 years, 3 to 4 years, I believe, because the OP gets approved by council, then it has to go to the minister, of course, for ministerial approval before it comes back, and then that's when we can kick off the zoning implementation report. But it will be in somewhat in phases. There's a sort of a quick report that should come by the end of 2022.
2022.
By 2022, which should check off some boxes right off the bat to get some things rolling, because we know it's going to take time, but we also want to make sure that we're on the right track to hit 60% on intensification. But then I think it's into 2023, 2024 that we see the rest of the zoning bylaw be implemented. So we do have a report on that, and I could probably find that and share it with you if you'd like. I don't know if Alan has anything to add, or Charmaine.
No, that's pretty much it, Mr. Chairman. So there will be full public consultation on the zoning, and the idea is that we're going to redo the zoning bylaw completely.
And so as the official plan is approved, then there's going to be an update in terms of what bylaws are going to be triggered for updates. And at that point, is there consultation with the public, or is it just basically indicating to the public that these are the bylaws that are going to be changed? And thereafter it goes to council, I gather.
Yeah, there's consultation throughout the zoning bylaw implementation as well.
Okay, that's good. Thanks.
No worries. We'll move on to Corlia.
Hi. First of all, thank you for the presentation. I think that you're doing a great job, very clear. And I agree that the building should be taken by the shape to see what you allowed for the sun to come in, and try not to obstruct the sun to our neighbors. But my question goes to, we are talking about the canopies and the tree canopies that I really like, but I want to know if we can establish that Amazon type buildings in rural areas must have a green roof to avoid bringing heat islands to the rural areas. We have now 2 big Amazon buildings near Manotick to both sides, and it's like attracting the heat between the parking lot and not green spaces. So if we have so much respect for the trees, I think that that could help too if we create some rules for that.
Thanks for the question. We have for the first time, heat island mapping that we didn't have in previous official plans. And we have encouraging policies, but we have to work as well within the limits of the Ontario Building Code. And the Ontario Building Code, we expect it to evolve and change over time, and we work with the province on that. But we also have to work with the home building industry and the commercial building industry on something that we are calling the high performance development standards. And that is also a process that will involve public consultation and public involvement. So that's not done yet. It's not finished. There's still going to be opportunity to talk about all these things. Again, the official plan has policies that enable this to happen, but the way it's implemented is through other mechanisms than through the official plan. So we'll have to connect the dots as we go along.
But like Toronto, the city of Toronto has it, so the Ontario Building Code somehow accept that.
There's a certain range of things within the building code. There's your absolute minimum requirements, and then there's if you go over and above the minimum requirements, but you're still within the building code. And yes, you're right. I mean, there's things that the city can do, and those things have to be agreed upon with everybody who's involved in construction. And that's the exercise that we're going through right now. And it's an ongoing thing. I think the strategy is to tackle it one building type at a time and start with the ones that can have the greatest impact or the greatest beneficial effect, and then move on to all the building types. We know that part of energy evolution does involve different ways of building buildings, heating buildings and cooling buildings, and all that is we need to do methodically the work of each type of building and landing what the rules are going to be for each type.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. I will say, there is, of course, an application, just as a story, there's an application for a similar type of development in North Gore. And council, we did something quite unique with that one, in that the site itself was actually designated and zoned already for a business park, an industrial commercial business park with a certain amount of square footage that had a max amount of square footage that you could see on the site. When the applicant came forward and said they wanted to build one building, but a much taller building than what was permitted, what we did was we actually, instead of zoning it from a floor space perspective, we actually zoned it from a volumetric perspective. So whatever they wanted in increased height in building capacity inside the building, I took away from the rest of the property. So we actually created a volume-based zoning cap on the property. So as they go up, they reduce the overall developable footprint on the site. We actually even were able to impose a 100-meter setback from residential area and then zone that open space so they can't touch it. They can't build anything in that at all. So we took a site that was wall-to-wall permitted development for industrial purposes on the 400 series highway, and we actually managed to still allow industrial development, still a warehouse use to take place, but to actually reclaim some of the property and to reduce the overall environmental impact to make it a better developed site from an environmental perspective. I don't disagree with the green roof suggestions as well, but certainly I think there's been a lot of talk about green roof policies. I don't think we're where we probably some people want us to be or where we could be, but certainly that's something that I think you'll see continue to evolve. So thank you. Next up is Mohammed, my vice chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Moffat. I just have a question about kind of, I guess, building on some of the points that Carolyn, member Mackenzie raised about the kind of context of the transects and context of neighborhoods, how that's defined, or how you're able to define a character, a neighborhood character in something like an official plan, recognizing that there is a gray zone between the official plan and these kind of its implementation arm, which is the kind of the zoning bylaws. There is always a gap, and I guess learning from the past and learning that it is important to define and protect and guide the growth of these neighborhoods, these distinct characters in our city. How does the official plan aim to kind of take that on and Or, can you point to examples of how you've taken that approach in the official plan?
Sure. No, I mean, that's a really good question. So the official plan is, let's say, at a more strategic level and looks at context on the basis of, if we can use words that are not jargon, the type of organization of space that you have. So the downtown core is the downtown core. Why? Well, because it's the nerve center of, in our case, the Canadian government, but it's the nerve center of the city. And why is it the nerve center of the city? Well, it's got a very high density, a very high and fine mixture of uses, and because people can function on foot 100%. Everything is reachable by foot. Distances are short. Transit service is at its highest. Everything converges on the downtown core. So that's a context. It is already a 15-minute neighborhood pretty much throughout its entire extent. So the rules there are, we want that to continue. We are actually worried about downtown. The pandemic will have an impact on employment in the downtown core, and we don't want downtown to die. We want downtown to stay lively. We want those ingredients to stay and flourish downtown. We want, obviously, people to go back to work, but more to the point, we want downtown to be a diverse place. So the policy goals for the downtown core are to complete the west downtown. So finish building LeBreton, finish building Zibi, finish building Gladstone, finish building Bayview, add that influx of population that will create a domestic market for there to be enough of the services that people need downtown. Remember, downtown has been hollowed out by the big box stores. We lost a hardware store on Beechwood. We lost a hardware store on George Street. So that's just a few of the examples. Schools have closed downtown. That needs to come back. These things need to be there and what we say about downtown is it's an urban place. So you're not allowed to build suburban type buildings or suburban type sites in the downtown core. We don't want suburban type development in LeBreton. We don't want suburban type developments in Gladstone. It has to be urban in the way the building is built, the way the building lands, the way the site is configured. And that means doors on street, and you don't see car parking from the sidewalk. There's no parking between the sidewalk and the building. It's underground, or it's in the back, or it's in the interior. It's just out of view, and cars interfere the least possible with pedestrians and cyclists. In the inner urban, well, you've got, kind of early 20th century neighborhoods, the streetcar neighborhoods. Those are mixed use as well. They are 15-minute neighborhoods, most of them. They are a little less dense, but they do function with that mix of uses. They have vibrant main streets. They have good transit service. And again, the intended form there is urban, not suburban. We don't want to dilute the urbanity of those neighborhoods. So everything that we're putting in place pushes toward reinforcing an urban character, urban typologies of buildings and site designs, and making sure that the first priorities for people to move on foot. Again, not that we're not accommodating vehicles, but we're giving the priority, and we're rebalancing priorities so that people on foot, on bike, and using transit have an equal footing with people on motor vehicles, and sometimes the priority and the edge. The outer urban is where it gets interesting, because there we're looking at a ring of neighborhoods that started being built in the 1950s, and they used to be at the edge of town, but they're not anymore. They're pretty central, and they're going to get some very good transit with stage 2. So then the question is, how do you start to reimagine those areas as 15-minute neighborhoods, knowing that most of them are not today, knowing that they have very different street patterns sometimes, knowing that they have very different site typologies sometimes. What do you do with those tower in the park sites? What do you do with those big shopping malls? And then what do you do on neighborhood streets? And that's all our work on infill and intensification that starts with the principles. We want neighborhood streets to still be low-rise. We want neighborhood streets to still be tree-lined. But we do want neighborhood streets to also be lively with families, with kids. Those have become very expensive neighborhoods, and they're out of reach for most people. So one of the goals of the official plan is to give young people a real shot at being able to buy a house in an existing neighborhood. It's never going to be like the 1960s are not coming back. It's never going to be the big piece of land with the single-story bungalow and the white picket fence. Those days are gone. But the land is there. The neighborhood is good. The proximities to important things is there. How do you continue to build on that to make sure that people have a shot at buying places in those neighborhoods and be close to things? And the rules are going to be, well, let's look at the building form. If the building form is good and it fits in the neighborhood, it's good to go. And that's where we want to also start to work on minor corridors. Those minor corridors can be the beginning of the skeleton of a stronger grid, of a stronger mix of uses. That's the logical place to start in those neighborhoods. So that's what I would say. In the suburban transect, the focus is really on the town centers. We have kept the goal of 10,000 jobs in each suburban town center. We're adding one, which is Riverside South. And that's where all the rapid transit lines will be converging. And honestly, I mean, what we've been hearing from most of the property owners in town centers, which are shopping malls, by and large, they're shopping malls, they're ready. They're ready to start changing. Plaza Orleans is ready to start changing. Canada Centrum's ready to start changing. Barrhaven, we just finished the Barrhaven downtown secondary plan. So in the next 25 years, there's going to be quite a bit of action in those town centers, and very interesting action as well, because all of our town centers, thanks to the foresight of the Ottawa-Carleton region, are already connected with rapid transit. They're ready to go. It's plug and play.
Thank you for that, Alain. That's a great just, you know, high level overview, I think, of how the official plan will look at the city and the morphology of the various kind of components that make up the city from center to out. I guess my question was maybe somewhere in between. So if you're at 30,000 feet going down to a bit lower, like how does the official plan talk about specific, can the official plan talk about specific character that relates to, say, the natural morphology of the city of Ottawa, its relationship to the river, its relationship to wind, or to, you know, like kind of really that drills down into neighborhoods and drills down into particular growth patterns that have evolved after, you know, 150 years of growth, let's say, and how does this official plan identify that character, that identity, and provide a structure for the zoning to really support its growth, but also support its kind of preservation.
We stopped short of going into that level of detail on purpose, I think, because we also want to give everybody the opportunity to, first of all, get familiar with the transect, get familiar with the big ideas, and then start to think about how these things would reasonably and desirably translate in their neighborhoods. So by the time we're doing zoning, that discussion can really start to make sense and be attached to real rules that are going to govern what people are allowed to build. So in answer to your question, we have stayed at a level that is more strategic, more general, but also retains enough flexibility for our colleagues in zoning to do the neighborhood by neighborhood work, the discussions that they will be having and that they've been asked to have.
I guess they're always the opportunity for the gray zone between a very high level, very well thought out, high level official plan that really structures the growth really well, and the kind of implementation at the zoning level. There's always that gray zone, and that big gray zone, you know, a lot of great things can happen, a lot of bad things can happen there too. And the question is, how does, you know, as the overarching document that really guides this growth in Ottawa, how is there recognition of that gray zone, and what you know, has there been measures put into place, again, learning from the past and learning from, you know, the history of the evolution of official plans in the city? What has gone into this official plan that's a little bit different, that can help, you know, redefine this gray zone in a way that makes these interpretations, or this kind of this implementation, future implementation of the official plan, go towards a path that meets the expectations of planners, official councillors, as well as the public?
Really good question. Again, I mean, you know, planning is a series of gray zones, as everybody will agree. I mean, you know, what we don't want to do is to be so descriptive and so prescriptive in an official plan that my colleagues, Leanne and Doug, who are on this call and listening, will have to say no to a good idea just because it doesn't meet a rigid framework. What we want to get right is the framework allowing for the type of creativity, the type of flexibility, the type of gray zones that will happen on a side-by-side basis, because no two sites are the same. There's always little quirks and quarks that take you into different design solutions, but the bones are fundamentally good, right? So we're trying to get those bones to be what they need to be. And, so we start with, well, let's describe at a high level, what's urban, what's suburban, and what's transitional. That's one layer of description. Within that, there can be a lot of different ways of doing something. But, if Leanne or Doug get an application for, okay, well, I want to build a single-story strip mall with parking in the front on Bank Street in the Glebe. No, that's that right away. That's like the first binary equation there is a fail. Go back and build in accordance to what the transect says. But then in accordance with what the transect says, there's a number of possibilities that are equally good, and the official plan doesn't want to go into that level of detail. Secondary plans in some cases do. So Bank Street in the Glebe will have a secondary plan that will have a lot of extra detail that's context sensitive to the Glebe. And where we have secondary plans, that level of policy is able to capture a number of things. We are bringing back 27 secondary plans, and we've got another 6 on the go. So at that level, we are able to introduce a number of elements that are more germane to a neighborhood, I would say.
Steph, final question. I just, again, recognizing the kind of the significance of the official plan and it's kind of, over kind of a long period of time. What parts are there components of the official plan in this development that are really designed to be obsolete and designed for revisions and updates? So, there's certain aspects of the plan, obviously, that you don't want to kind of have to go and revisit. But there's certainly aspects that you're kind of by design recognize the change that happens around the city, or recognize the speed of evolution of the city, in response to, maybe the city is also increased in size and density and diverging opinions. And it's also subject to a global, the city's a reflection of global trends and what's happening around the world. So what parts of that plan can be responsive to change and are designed to actually be changed? And
that's one of the best questions I've heard on this whole public consultation so far. So, I very much appreciate it. I mean, at the core of it, I think the whole system of transects allows for future generation of planners to see where things are at and adapt. Transect boundaries could change as well. And we've had requests for changes to the transect boundaries, and we have done some changes, but that's not to say that future planners doing the same job we're doing in 10, 15, 20 years may not decide to map transects differently. One of the things we did this time is we eliminated the old central area designation and replaced it with a downtown transect, which reflects the actual extent of today's downtown core, which is much, much bigger. That's one notable change. And the goals we have today for the downtown, if we reach them in 25 years, I don't know what the goals will be for the downtown in 25 years, but that policy instrument is there in order to provide for that revision. So for each transect, let's say that in 25 years, the suburban transect is at the same stage of evolution as the outer urban is today. It would have different goals for the following 25 years. It would have different policies based on a study of that transect's morphology and building age and what the opportunities might be based on the needs of people in 2050, who we can't guess about. Those are our children's children. So, I think it's recognizing that the city is never a finished product. Neighborhoods are never a finished product. There's always a constant, that urban sedimentation that happens naturally would make it very arrogant for us to say, well, this is it, and that's it, that's all, and no more change after this. No, things keep changing. And it's to understand by context what you're dealing with and how to give guidance to that change. Where is it going to? What is it changing to? That's what we're trying to do. It's our first time out with this approach, and we'll have to grow with it, and there will be adjustments along the way. We're not going to get it right 100% the first time out, but at least it sets us on that path, and I think it sets us for those discussions on an ongoing basis as well.
I'll be interested just to, again, maybe at another time, just to learn more about what you've designed in this plan, that whether it's a 5-year cycle or a 10-year cycle or a 3-year cycle, that there's some aspects of it that are predetermined, that will go through a study or a revision or an analysis of some kind to kind of evaluate you kind of plan for obsolescence in a way.
Right. I mean, and in a way, legislation keeps us to that because, you know, we have 10-year review now that this is a brand new official plan. It's 10-year review. We'll have a 5-year touch base on the land supply, but it's a 10-year review for the plan. And then if we amend the plan, it's on a 5-year cycle. So and then there's the monitoring that we'll be doing.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Mohammed. Thank you, Alain. And we will go to Shannon Bassett.
Thanks for the presentation. Just to kind of build on what Mohammed and Carolyn were asking about maintaining characters of older neighborhoods. You know, one of the questions I have, and again, I'm in the glebe, but I see a lot of intensification happening. An extreme example was like what was the historic Charlotte Whitten, I believe, house on Renfrew, that the property owners bought it with they stated they were going to keep it, and then, you know, let it rot and then bulldozed it and maxed like a 3-story volume that is effectively blocked, you know, the people's views into Central Park. And so, you know, and that's just one example. So I guess my question is, like, at what point is there a need for like a historic overlay of the kind of historic neighborhood fabric in a neighborhood like the Glebe, because it's going to arguably continue to be intensified. And in terms of, like, you know, suburban, I also see like these newer interventions having garages like on the front of them. And then the second question is more along the lines of question I've asked before, but in terms of like the green infrastructure, you know, what are opportunities, you know, and this is an alignment with some of the, I guess, the things that Tone Dreesen has been doing in terms of like federal government procurement, kind of pushing for a more competition, design excellence. What are the opportunities that you've looked into that maybe some of the public park design could be kind of best practices or design excellence instead of status quo? I mean, and again, for green infrastructure, that might be best practices and performative green infrastructure, mitigating needs for culverts. So those are my 2 questions or comments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, thanks for that. I mean, I think on your first one, you know, for such a young city, we have a long history of heartbreaks of very beautiful buildings that get torn down and get replaced. You know, it was happening in the 19th century, it was happening in the 20th century. I mean, if you look at old pictures of Ottawa, a lot of streets are not recognizable today. And that's just, you know, the normal process of urbanization. I think what happened in the 20th century especially is that in addition to that process, we also had modernist and brutalist architecture that was very devoid of ornamentation, very devoid of the architectural aesthetic that people usually associate with, you know, grand cities, elegant streetscapes, and the kind of things that you would want to conserve. So the whole discussion of architecture and architectural style is one that we tackled. We tackled it in a couple of places in the official plan. We're tackling it in the Glebe, interestingly enough, we're about to put in a secondary plan that will talk about architectural style. But leaving that aside, again, concentrating on urban form, we hope that the policy focus that we put on urban form at least will get you buildings that are of an architectural language that is common to the neighborhood you're in. And that's what we're trying to get at. So if you're talking about, you know, you're in the Glebe and you're seeing an infill with a garage in the front that looks like it belongs in the burbs, it does belong in the burbs. It doesn't belong in the Glebe. In the Glebe, you should be building differently, and that's not where you put your garage, and that's not where you put your driveway. And we want that to be clear. And we want the industry to be clear on that. They need to play ball with us on that.
Yeah, I mean, I've lived in Boston and even Tampa, which you wouldn't think would have an historical overlay, but you know, there was an older district that had an historical district overlay and a historic commission or an urban design review panel. So I just feel like to save these neighborhoods while we still can, I think that there needs to be other structure in place to save these while we can, and to somewhat balance the intensification that's happening, because as in the example of that historic cottage, it's going to be gone.
Right. I mean, we do have a heritage section, and they're very busy going through the evaluation that they do of districts and buildings. And in some cases, yeah, what the city would do is like create a heritage conservation district or designate a building under the Heritage Act. But that's when the focus is on keeping something. And under the Heritage Act, there's reasons why you would keep something. And that's a blunt instrument too, because you're basically telling a property owner, you got to keep what you got. You can't, or there's only a limited number of things that you can do. On the other hand, if you don't have a heritage district, what we're saying is there should still be rules that say, if you're going to replace something, or if you're going to add to something, how is it going to fit? How is it going to, is it going to be integrated into the context where it's at? And again, there can be different answers for different streets and different neighborhoods, but at the basis, it's not that complicated. Are you doing a building that is of the same typology, of the same, I'm not sure how to pick a word here, but the same type of setup as what you see around you? Or is it a foreign object? Is it a foreign element, right? And one of the biggest, places where we start to see that is, well, are you putting a suburban thing into an urban place? That's the first thing that sticks out like a sore thumb. So enough of that. Let's just start with the basics. We'll be successful as a city if we land well on that. Doesn't mean no development. It means development that is fitting the context, and then you can develop. And then we get into the urban aesthetics, the urban design, and how you clad a building, how you ornament a building, there's a number of things that other jurisdictions are doing that we can keep learning from, and I think we should continue to look at least improve. But I get exactly what you're saying.
And there's also ways you can give homeowners incentives to do like adaptive reuse or to preservation, right? Because, arguably people want to live in historic districts, not in suburbs. I mean, that's kind of a general comment, but I think that people who do live in the center core are attracted to the older kind of fabric of these neighborhoods.
Right, and it's a two-way street. People who live in the suburbs don't want something that's a foreign object either. So you wouldn't, like, again, not to pick on the glebe, but you wouldn't want to glebify Canada. It would be a foreign object. Canada is not the glebe. Canada has its own character, has its own flavor, has its own typology of buildings, and you should fit with that. So the transect is set up to do that as well. If you're building an infill in Canada, well, it should look like what's around you. And if it's suburban, well, you should be doing a suburban type building. That's fair as fair, right? So it's non-judgmental from that standpoint. People can make the choice they're going to make. But when you're doing a building in a context, you should be taking cues from what's around you.
Yes, sorry. The second part of the question was what I've asked other times in terms of, the green infrastructure in the official plan. Again, are there ways, because it's a capital city, are there ways to look at kind of best case practices of design excellence in maybe some of our park designs that can, have performative ecologies, and then that layers as well with, procurement. Like, are there opportunities and maybe some of the public space systems to have competitions as opposed to, taking the lowest bidder in terms of procurement?
Yes, no, sorry for skipping over that question. It is, so I had planned to get to it. So one of the things that happened through this official plan is that Parks and Facilities has been talking to us quite a bit. They're going to be using our transect mapping for their planning. And one of the things we discussed with them is to have a typology of parks and green spaces that also matches the transect. It's not the same to be in an inner urban neighborhood where you have parks like, Central Park in the Glebe, which is, a late 19th century park with railings and formal stairs and edges, and, well, that's an urban rendition of a park. versus a 1950s park, which is more of an open field. It's it's got swings on the side, but like there's no formality to it. There's no fencing to it. There's no sidewalk often. So they want to work on typologies of parks based on where you are in the city. And what's going to be interesting is in the inner and outer urban transects, whether they start to introduce some of the typologies that we see in the older parts of town. Actually, yeah, if you look at pictures of parks from the early 1900s, they look like very different places. They have more of a design polish to them. They have formal paths and benches and lights and stairs and retaining walls, and the space is more laid out. It's more programmed. It's more thought through. There is, Frederick Law Olmsted, who designed Central Park, and then the Mount Royal Park in Montreal is famous for having done such wonderful spaces by very deliberate planning and design of green space and open space. And so the Parks and Green Space Master Plan is going to touch on that. The other thing that you're, I think, talking about is green infrastructure in the sense of the low impact development standards. So LIDs, the kinds of things that we do on certain streets where we have bioswales, where we have larger space for planting trees that also act as a stormwater catchment. And there is now a mention in the official plan of that, which did not appear in the existing official plan.
Yeah, I don't want to monopolize this, but to use Central Park as an example, I mean, that was originally water. And so I just see them putting in very costly kind of culvert infrastructure to mitigate the flooding that happens there. But at the same time, there's, it was wonderful when it froze, like people would have an impromptu skating a couple of years ago. And so I would just encourage you or urge you to look at kind of best case practices where leading landscape designers are integrating kind of floodable landscapes or landscapes that are performative and not, putting in costly infrastructure to mitigate flooding.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is that it, Shannon? Anything else?
No, that's it.
Awesome. No worries. I just want to check before moving on. So David, you're back on the list. Go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor. I apologize. I should have taken a little more time to get all my questions together, but I took a few more minutes to reflect on.
All right, you're allowed to come back on. It's fine.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, it's not like council where you get 5 minutes and you're cut off. So
well, I'm not the mayor, and at committee we do things differently. At committee, you can come back on more times. Perfect.
Thank you very much. I just had 2 follow-up questions regarding housing affordability. At GOBA, we know housing affordability has become absolutely non-existent in Ottawa right now. There's a huge supply issue with market demand. So because I'm very happy to see housing affordability prioritized in the new draft OP. So from a land economics point of view, market demand is currently far outweighing the availability of service land. I sit on the Canadian Home Builders Board of Directors. This is a national issue. It's not just a provincial issue. So it's not just a local Ottawa issue. This is all across Canada. There's also been a lot of recent economic reports that are concluding that the only proven solution to fix housing affordability is to build more homes. So we need to do this all together. It's community groups, it's elected officials, it's staff, and it's GOBA. It's builders that are going to provide more supply to help the market demand. So my 2 questions. My first question is, will there be any new policy added to the OP to help streamline the planning approval process to bring projects to the market quicker? We know that if there's quicker approvals, we'll have a direct impact on the soft costs of a project, which will help housing affordability. If you reduce the soft costs of a project, it's going to make the project more affordable, and we're going to be able to offer more affordable units to residents. But more importantly, it's also going to add more housing supply. If there's more housing supply, we'll satisfy the market demand. So my first question is, will there be new policy added to the OP to help streamline the planning and approval process? And my second question is, if the answer to that is yes, can we build off of the zoning bylaw and build off of the R4 reviews that have previously been done And can Otto ever achieve an as of right site plan exempt 613 flat?
Good questions, David. I think, on your first question, I don't think that the official plan would be the place where we talk about process, and Leanne and Doug are on this call, but the official plan, certainly the report that introduces the official plan will come with the work plan annex, where we will be looking at mechanisms that can help accelerate the production of housing and get more housing to market quicker. It's not an official plan policy, it's a procedural matter. And those will be part of the package. So to your second question, again, the answer is yes, we want to get ourselves to the stage where 613 flat is available just upon a building permit as of right. Again, that's not the official plan that's going to do that, but procedurally what we want to do is to get them footprinted, which is the program that's used typically by our building code services in suburban contexts, where let's say developer X has like 5 models of townhouse. Well, they footprint each of the 5 models. And if their subdivision of 900 lots has, okay, I've got 200 of model A, 200 of model B, 300 of model C, et cetera, et cetera. Well, it's footprinted. So you just get 1 permit for each model and then you're good to go. We want to do that for 613 flats. And basically we want to do that for small scale multi-residential buildings that otherwise meet all zoning. And where we do want to reduce red tape as much as possible. So I don't have precise details of how that's going to be done, but it's very much in our minds because, as you said, it is a concern that we have as well to make sure we're taking roadblocks out of housing production. On the other hand, if you need amendments or if there's issues that don't meet the checklist, we'll call you back in for site plan and we'll have those conversations. I see Leanne has her hand up.
Thanks, Elaine. I think it's a really good issue that David's raised. I just wanted to make a quick comment on it. We've certainly been having discussions that I think maybe part of the policy would be considering increasing our thresholds for site plan. So it would be encouraging more sites to go through that could be exempt from site plan, as Elaine had mentioned, in terms of getting to more as of right builds. So I think there could be some policy statements that we've been sort of considering and discussing that, as David has talked to us about previously, just with respect to trying to encourage more of those infill builders to do so with our levels of intensification. And I think just from a process perspective, David, you make a really good point with respect to housing affordability and timelines for the approval process. And certainly we have undertaken to develop a bit of a backlog reduction strategy within our team. We're going to be sharing it with the industry for feedback next week. And we've been able to get approvals for 5 temporary planners to be added immediately to development review to try and help with that backlog that we're currently experiencing. So I'm really glad you raised the question. Thank you.
Well, thank you to both, and I'll to both of you, and I'll also share from the Canadian home builders. They're going to be giving I'll be receiving in the next 2 months a guide to what you can provide to municipalities to help with the approval process. And you guys are actually doing majority of what the Canadian home builders are recommending. So if you're open to that, I'm happy to share it with you guys when I receive it. And I think you're already going down the right path. There's no doubt about that. And
I hope you're saying that to the Canadian Home Builders Association. I hope you're
I'm speaking about what you guys are doing. So I'm happy to share that with anyone that wants to see it, frankly, because housing affordability affects all of us. It affects our children. And we've drawn a line in the sand and we said, this is how much land supply is coming in this official plan. Let's turn the page. We're moving on. So now we have to say, how can we get more service land ready to offer more housing choice and to achieve intensification targets and every other goal that's put forward in the OP. So thank you, both you, fantastic responses. I'm happy to hear that. And I'm always here to help any way possible. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. I will say, oh, there he is there. So I was talking to Jeff during the meeting. He said, Jeff Leeper is here, of course. I mentioned that earlier. He would like to jump in, but he wanted to respect the members of the committee prior to doing so. So go ahead, Jeff.
Thanks, Scott. So I guess the biggest question for me in the new OP and especially with the What We Heard report having come out now is for the R1 neighborhoods. The density requirements of the previous version of the official plan, I think would have led to probably a requirement for things like semi-detached in currently R1 neighborhoods. But I'm just wondering where you see the policies of the OP leading with respect to R1 neighborhoods, particularly in the inner urban neighborhoods. If we wanted to maintain single detached only zones, and developers were interested in rebuilding those with semis and began seeking rezonings, what's the internal logic of the OP that would lead one way or the other?
I mean, I think it would be a little premature to give an answer, a blanket answer on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis. But I mean, I think there's two things here. One is the density targets are targets, so they're not requirements. So therefore, we would be talking about zoning permissions more than we would be talking about zoning requirements. So what becomes permitted would then reflect what's in the official plan. And then based on permissions, I mean, there's a number of ways. I mean, to answer your question, if there's a wish to retain an ability to have single family homes, I mean, then what you would need to regulate is the lot size and frontage. You can reach those inner urban density target brackets with single family homes if you have a lot size that adds to that math. So there's a lot of different ways to get there. Again, what we want to concentrate on is form, building form, and the elements of streetscape that define neighborhoods.
I cannot help but think that the pressure is going to be on during the comprehensive zoning bylaw review to follow for neighborhoods like Civic Hospital, where there's a significant swath of R1 zoning, or McKellar Park, where there's a really significant swath of R1 zoning. And I have to imagine that the developers are going to want to argue for an upzoning to allow semi-detached at least. And I wonder what the policies are of the official plan if council were to determine that it wanted to maintain that single detached. You know, what could we lean on in the OP to justify maintaining that zoning?
Okay, so a couple of things. One is, as you may have seen, I don't know if you've noticed, but as you may have seen, we count secondary dwelling units to density.
Yep.
Right. And so there's a number of different ways that you can get to density. Even if your main home is a single family home, you can have a basement apartment and you can have a coach house. You can now do both. Right now you can do either or, but we've opened the door that you can do both. You can have a basement apartment and you can have a coach house. If the question is, I want to do a semi, then the first thing is, well, if you're in the inner urban transect, you cannot do a suburban type building. So the types of semis that we've seen with 2 garages in the front and 2 driveways, that's finished. Gone. No more of those. You will have to do a semi with a single driveway, shared driveway, and we don't want to see a garage in the front. That's it. So under those circumstances, is it so bad? Maybe not. If there's a carriageway that takes the cars to a facility in the back and they park and they're out of view and out of sight, and you've got 2 trees in the front and green front yards, is that so bad? Maybe not. It all depends on the form. It all depends on how it hits the ground. And in that context, if there's a wide lot that's wide enough to allow for that to happen, maybe it's not so bad. So these are discussions. Again, there's a lot of different ways to get there. I think that the more, I guess, the low-hanging fruit here is to make sure that we don't allow things that are visibly out of context and visibly out of character, such that they would antagonize people unnecessarily about the wrong thing. The wrong thing here being density. It's not the density that's the problem often, it's how that density is designed and how it looks. And again, there's a lot of examples, be it Glebe, be it Golden Triangle, be it any number of neighborhoods, even in your ward, Councillor Leeper, where good design makes density irrelevant and invisible. And that's what we want to focus on.
I'm still going to be noodling that through because some of the communities, some of the existing R1 communities are going to want to preserve single detached. That's a defining feature of their neighborhood. And we need to understand what the policy logic is of the OP for whether or not that is defensible when we go to do the comprehensive zoning bylaw review, or after the CBZL to see whether or not there's anything defensible there, rather than sort of say, yeah, we think we can, and then have to sort of say, well, no, actually the LPAT's not going to sustain us on that because policy X, Y, and Z of the new OP enables it. And I really want to try to understand that, because I've got a good feeling we've already done R4. And I you know, the new OP is not going to change that very much. We've done the Westboro infill study with the R3, and we have a really good understanding, I think, of what R3 neighborhoods will evolve like if it follows the pattern. But the R1 neighborhoods are still very uncertain as to what this OP means for them. So we'll continue noodling all summer. I appreciate the answer, Elaine.
Thanks, Councillor.
Thanks, Scott.
Call me anytime if you want to talk about it.
Yeah.
No worries. Just if you could like succinctly wrap that up, is you're an R1 neighborhood. What can you expect in this OP? Like, what's your future in that R1 neighborhood? Because we've had some controversial applications in R1 neighborhoods. And I think the most recent one, most of the folks in this committee are familiar with the urban densities and the urban challenges that we've had. But one of the longest parade of delegations that we've had in recent memory was in Canada, with a simple 3-story, 12-unit building on a transit route, but in an R1 zone. Wide lot, can easily fit it, you know, meets the actual height requirements, actually was below the height cap in the community existing, did not require a height increase in the zoning. But it was an R4 application in an R1 neighborhood, and the residents lost their minds. And that's in Canada, right? So this is suburban. That's the future. And I've talked about Barrhaven many times. At the end of this boundary discussion, Barrhaven conceivably is done. It's got its northern cap, which is the Greenbelt, its western cap, which is the 416, its eastern cap, which is the river, and Barnsdale to the south, which is all prime ag south of it. So everything future in Barrhaven, even though Barrhaven, in some parts of Barrhaven, it's a higher unit per hectare count than the glebe, but in other parts, you know, you're going to see intensification in Barrhaven in the coming years. That's how the growth will have to occur. So in those communities, what can we expect in there? Because I think the pushback in the future is going to be significant, and it's going to be tougher to implement, and it's going to be more clear once we get to the zoning piece.
Yes, no, absolutely. And Barrhaven, I mean, Barrhaven's the size of Kingston. You know, in the next 25 years, it'll grow its job count, but it'll blow past Kingston in population, no doubt about it. And ironically, we don't use the R1 zone in Barrhaven. Haven't used it for decades. You know, it's all R3 or R4 in all new suburbs. We don't use the R1 zone anymore. So, I mean, the answer is, because of the changes that we've made, there's no requirement. There's density permissions, right? So what R1 neighborhoods can expect is, when we get around to redoing the zoning bylaw, there will be permissions in the zoning. But because they're permissions, you know, if people don't want to do anything different with their own single family home, they get to keep it, they get to rebuild it, they get to add to it. You know, there's any number of things. The question is, should you impose on your neighbors to keep this the idea of a single family home perpetual there? And that's where we have to really start the discussion. There's no such thing as an R1 neighborhood. There's an inner urban neighborhood. There's a low-rise neighborhood. There's a downtown neighborhood. There's a suburban neighborhood. But, you know, in many of these so-called R1 neighborhoods, there's already a number of things that are happening. There's already, there's already single-family homes that are being rented by the room or to households. There's already a lot of single-family homes that have apartments. There's a lot of single-family homes that have had additions. So again, you look at the building. how can we, sitting here today in 2021, presume to know what people in 2046 are going to need out of that building? They're going to want the location, but are we future-proofing those neighborhoods enough to make sure that generations can still come into the neighborhoods, use these buildings with needs that we don't yet anticipate, but probably it will mean, yeah, there will be a demand for residential opportunities in good neighborhoods. And the official plan should talk to that with the sensitivity that you want to have to context. And that's what we're trying to do. But I think the whole idea of R1 neighborhoods comes from that mid 20th century mentality of segregation of things, where you have one type of thing here, one type of thing there, one type of thing there. And we saw that it didn't work. The city doesn't work that way. The city is much more of a blend. It's much less surgical than that. And we have to allow for that reality, especially in light of the conversation we just had with David Renfro about affordability. I mean, freezing things like an idea that comes from the 1960s guarantees that your affordability is gone. So that's, I think, where a lot of the discussion will take us.
All right, thanks for that. Doug, you just put your camera on, so I wasn't sure if you wanted to all of a sudden.
Yeah, I was just wondering, and it happened in other cities, but I'm just wondering, is listening to Alain speak in the future, and what Councillor Leeper has brought up, is it like the R1, maybe the R1 community, the R1 neighborhood we've known is come to the end of its time? As Alain said, you have permissions, you can have a coach house, you can have a secondary dwelling unit. It's not just a single detached dwelling with just say a nuclear family living in it. And maybe if we're going the way of 613 flats, where it's really the design of the building that matters and not the density, it's the look and how it sits and fits from the street view. Perhaps it's just, there's been a slow evolution, but maybe it is time to, when it comes to the zoning bylaw, okay, these neighborhoods are coming to the end of their era, because we looking for some smaller, minor, more just intensification, but it's time for them to evolve, just like every other neighborhood. R3, R4 evolves, as Councillor Leeper had said. There are different ways that things we've done to make sure that, if you're going to have 3 units, you're going to have 4 units, this is how they're going to fit in. So if you're going to have more than just a single detached dwelling, this is how it has to fit in. And maybe it's the term rip the bandage off, but maybe it's time to make that evolutionary change.
Which is exactly what we've been trying to talk about. But I mean, obviously there's a reality, there's a
probably a
political
reluctance,
yeah, that will make it more challenging. And and I've been kind of pushing that thought that we need to lead on this. We can't, I'm not going to name communities. There's been a few communities that were the strongest in favor of holding the line of the urban boundary, that have also pushed back the most on some of the intensification policies, because they didn't realize that one begets the other, at least in their neighborhood. They've seen it elsewhere. They've seen Kitchissippi take their fair share of intensification over the last 10, 15 years. And I think they just assumed it was going to continue like that. They didn't realize they were next. And I think that's the tough part, is that how do we blend that in? How do we address those concerns of intensification in those communities, but still find a way to meet those needs, so that we're not just relying on 40-story towers in place. I've said to another councillor, we can't tower our way to 60%. That's not going to work. Mm-hmm. We need to take established single family homes and have some conversions there. Doesn't mean all of them, doesn't mean your whole community is going to change, but there will be some changes. We've already seen them in other established communities from the 60s, 70s. I think a community like Bell's Corners, can take more growth, can take more change. It's capped by its size because of surrounded by the green belt, but we're going to put LRT at its doorstep in the next few years. Things can change there. You have a massive parking lot with a closed Zellers. What can happen in that parking lot? There's so much potential there, right? I know if we factor those in, of course, to our OP as to what can happen in the densities, but it's in those other neighborhoods too. So, I look at a community like Manotick. Just 15 years ago, they were fearful of what Minto was. They thought, and they thought they wanted more of the same. Manotick unfortunately grew with just 1 acre, almost 1 acre lots. I think they're 3/4 of an acre, but it's taken up a lot of the space. But the Minto development, while it was incredibly opposed at the start, it's actually adapted to the market change and to what the demand has been in the village. So through the 2015 secondary plan, we saw the community say, we want certain type of housing that we don't have. We want more housing opportunities in the village. Out of that was born the regional development on Main Street, where we saw a bunch of adult lifestyle bungalows built in Manotick at a high density rate. Minto saw the success of that, and actually started building that in their phase 2, which is something they never planned, because their entire plan was 2-story single family homes throughout. That didn't even work in their phase 1. They had to move to bungalows because that was what the demand was. So, a community like Manotick, I've seen it shift in the last 10 years. We're seeing more density in the core of Manotick, 3-story apartment buildings, rentals in the middle of Manotick. That's something that I don't think they expected or supported 15 years ago. So communities can shift. Affordability is a huge challenge in Manotick. I think a recent report says the average housing price is $1.2 million for a house in Manotick. It's unaffordable. So you need that shift in housing so that you can actually have some balance in your community. If it's just more of the same, you're going to lose businesses. And you can't afford that. You can't afford to hollow out your community. You need to have a full community, a complete community, and that requires housing choice within that neighborhood. And some communities don't have that. Hopefully we get there in all communities, and that can create that 15-minute neighborhood that you can live in a place, work in a place, hopefully retire in the same place, with that housing choice too. Sorry, I'm just going off. I'm droning on. Mohammed.
Thank you for that. Actually, I think what you were talking about, I think brings to light kind of a comment that I wanted to bring up earlier, which is, in the shift of the official plan and again, the official plan is a great document. It's really recognizing patterns and responding to them and really mapping a path forward. So it's decided that to do that, the need is to look at kind of the form of a city, the form, and allow that, to dictate the success and the kind of, the acceptance of some of these applications that might be controversial or might not appear to be the most logical or desirable choice at the outset, but again, through careful consideration, careful design, and careful form building, they'll have a great chance to succeed and to contribute to the growth of the neighborhood and the city as a whole. Having said that, I think use is a very important aspect of that of design that should somehow still play a very significant role. So, I guess when the pendulum swings with this new official plan to really focus on form and the growth of the city, I think my hope is that there's still a very careful consideration of use in how that pendulum swings, because when you think of that resistance in Canada to this development, well, it's not, like you say, it's not a form issue. It's not an issue with form. If the building fits the guidelines, fits the pattern that's been established there. It's really how that building is used that the neighbors might have been responding to. So it's you kind of have to go hand in hand. You can't push one and leave the other behind. That the two kind of need to work together for successful design. So I really do hope that the official plan keeps that in mind and recognizes that you can't tilt the pendulum into, because then when it swings back, it'll swing back harder, and it'll kind of create more extreme kind of reaction. But I just want to be, I know it's getting late. I just want to touch on or recognize a conversation that's happening in the chat with respect to the timeline of the official plan and the release of drafts. And I just want to bring that conversation out into the discussion, because it is an important topic. I have heard that come up many times. Things seem to be moving very quickly. Certainly, we've seen that we have a special session on documents that have been freshly released. I'm a member of the OAA. I'm here on the panel as representing the OAA, yet I've had very little time to actually consult with colleagues and reflect on some of the feedback that's contained in the As We Heard It report. And again, that's just a function of how fast things are moving. So I would like to kind of acknowledge the question that has come up. I think Alex Cullen raised that first question about the timeline. It's, the final draft is being released late August. Everyone's on vacation. School starts, a week from then. Everyone's busy getting their kids to school or getting ready for, September. And it seems to be at a time where there's a very short window really for a good amount of reflection and responses by all those community associations and people that are going to be impacted the most by this, and who have, like Carolyn, has a very deep understanding of this. And we would like to have the time to carefully contribute and meaningfully contribute to this draft. So I think it's something that would be great if we can just touch upon and to see how do you respond to that really short time frame that we're facing.
Yeah, you're right. It's a conversation we have in the chat that I realize that other people can't see. But to that point, and just to reiterate my response in there, was that the idea is that we won't just drop a document at the end of August and say, here, what are your thoughts? Come to a public meeting in 2 days. That it will be released sort of in segments as we go, as it's prepared, so that we can give ample time. But also that the baseline for it is that initial draft, and that the changes that are made, as was mentioned earlier, I think Charmaine, Alain, when they were talking, was explaining that it's going to come out in sort of a track changes format. It will be very clear, and it has to be clear. And I think this conversation makes that even more obvious. That it needs to have that clarity as to what's in that OP that's different than what you saw earlier. But knowing that the baseline for the conversation is still that initial draft OP, and that we're taking the comments and concerns that we heard through that process and addressing them in this. And today's conversation is a part of that. The discussion that we've had internally with councillors is also part of that. And then as it comes out in phases, that you will have opportunity to be able to look at that. There's no perfect scenario. There's no perfect timeline that suggests that, because every time you push things off, you push something else further. So it's kind of that internal clock that we're working on as well, where we want to make sure we get to that zoning implementation as quick as possible. Well, not as quick as possible, but we need to get there. And we know that the process with the minister is going to take some time as well. So I feel that staff are aware. Charmaine, if you want to talk a bit to that timeline and to that release piece, I think it's important that we get it out as soon as possible, obviously, but it has to be ready, has to go. And then for it to be clear, and that community associations and the public at large will be able to look at it. I think if someone's coming to this process for the first time now, it's going to be tough and almost impossible for them. But knowing we've had the engagement that we've had on this to date, the people who continue to engage on this are likely people that have already been heavily engaged and understand where that baseline is. So it should be a more straightforward process the second time around with that draft OP, because of how we present it. Charmaine, do you want to add anything to that?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mohammed. Yeah, I certainly understand it's not ideal being the summer. I understand that and I appreciate that. Excuse me. That's why we don't typically do interim as we heard it reports with the changes. Typically what we do is we would drop it at the end, say, ta-da, here it is, and here's all the changes. And so recognizing that it is significant and there has been a lot of feedback, we have done the citywide, and we will be doing the main, what we've heard, and the main responses to it will be in the ward specific as we heard it reports. All of those will be available as we're crafting them. They will be available on Engage Ottawa. So I'm hoping that will help as well. And and thank you, Chair, for pointing out about the track changes. They will be available as ready. Also, the highlight sheets. I'm taking a look at the highlight sheets that we had. We had 21 of them. I'll be looking at those and seeing where the changes are and highlight. So I'm doing my best to make it as user-friendly as possible, but I do understand it's a big document, but I'm very hopeful how we present it this time will be, you'll just be having to look at the changes. There's been a lot of thoughtful feedback. Folks are very well aware of what's in the OP. And so I think that this way is a good way of doing it. So any communication that the wording has changed, I will reflect it. in-track changes, because I think that's easier for everyone to understand, and then the clean version for those that just want to read through it. So I hope that, I know it's not probably the ideal response, but that is certainly the way that we have our path going forward. And I do think it will help. I hope that helps, you understand that. I don't know. It's 284 pages. I get it. But I think this way, I'm confident that you will be able to get through it without having to read it from start to finish this time.
All right, thanks for that. I just want to be cognitive of time. So we lost Tom Moss at around 7:30, which meant we lost quorum. Now, again, we don't actually approve anything substantive here. So it's not, quorum isn't the be all end all for an advisory committee, but just to recognize that we don't have quorum, but I mean, it doesn't change how we can proceed. That said, Alain does have to depart himself in 10 minutes. So I just wanted to throw it out there. And as a result, I want to go directly to Carolyn to make sure that your question can be responded to by Alain if that's where it's going. So go ahead, Carolyn, sorry.
Oh, yeah, thanks. Actually, I think Mohammed covered off the comments that I wanted to make. Just very briefly, a quick comment, picking up on something you had said, Scott, was just about the where communities were opposed to the urban boundary expansion. And I think you're absolutely right. Can't have it both ways. You can't say hold the line, don't expand, and then not be prepared to think about how intensification can be part of your neighborhood. The question is, well, if not your neighborhood, then where is everyone going to go? And I think in my own neighborhood and in my community association, I think we had a very, looking each other in the whites of the eyes and say, come on, guys, we have room, we can make room, and it will be, and if we do it well, and if we pay attention, I think there'll be some great benefits to the neighborhood as well, and we'll make some room for people who can't necessarily buy homes, but can rent and get into the neighborhood. So, and that's a good thing. So I think it is possible. I guess I would circle back, and I'll be very brief, just to this idea of the importance of the modeling and seeing which to me is sort of the evidentiary basis for the enabling language that we put in the official plan as well. What do those numbers, what does the math tell us about what we need to do? Because if it's not going to go into, if you're trying to make the case for why you should be limiting something in your neighborhood, everyone needs to have the big picture of how the whole picture has to fit together. And that's part of the reason why I think it's really important that that math be provided to people so that they can understand those trade-offs. And if you want to push people outside the boundary, then we're going to have 400,000 more drivers, and that's just not a good thing. So
exactly.
I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Exactly, Carolyn, and thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. So yeah, I mean, absolutely, and that's why we want to get the math, finalized and released. High level, as I alluded to earlier, if we need 49,000 dwelling units for large households, which we understand to include families with kids, 49,000 of those, we have 178,000 eligible lots. And assuming that each lot takes more than one, let's say, even if at the least each lot took two, well, that's 24,500 lots out of 178,000 that need to change. And if there's some lots that can take three, if there's some lots that can take four, you see where I'm going. I mean, the real impact, if you've got 178,000 lots in neighborhoods, and the real impact of absorbing 49,000 family-sized units is, a fraction, like, maybe 10, 15% of those lots over the course of 25 years that would see some change.
Yeah.
I would like that message to also reach as many people as possible. I think we'll be okay. It's not going to be a very drastic change. It will be change, but it's not going to be as drastic a change as I think some people fear. And we understand that people do fear drastic change because there has been a lot of drastic change in some parts of the city. When you see a tall, high-rise building being built, it is drastic change. But we've really put a lot of emphasis here on the small scale. We want to get the small scale right.
Yeah.
And I realize we have trust to build on that. And that's why we did all just the initial images of 613 Flats were our first foot out on starting that conversation. It's a conversation we'll have for quite a long time.
All right, thanks for that. I will just point out that there's I sit on an advisory board for the Ottawa Climate Action Fund, and they've been having a conversation about this as well. They see their role in advocating for, climate change policies through the intensification piece as well. And they're actually working on a kind of an exciting plan to help grow that conversation about intensification, to see the values of it and see what it means on the ground, to try to, I don't know, I guess broaden that conversation. Quite often when we talk about intensification, we're almost always talking to the converted already. It's rare that when we do this policy conversation that we're talking to the people that are going to have to deal with the changes that we make. So they're looking at starting a campaign to kind of target those areas where maybe these residents aren't traditionally engaged, but they're the ones that are going to see the most change. How can we make them part of the conversation? I think Carolyn's point is the same, is that if you recognize it's coming, you can prepare for it. Not only can you prepare for it, you can plan as to where you feel it belongs. It's a lot easier to take when you feel you had a role in where it went. That's the conversation we had with the Mantic Secondary Plan, was saying, listen, there's going to be bigger development here. I even tried to push the 5-story argument. The community wouldn't take it too much, but I was preparing them for saying that this is going to happen. Someone's going to come forward with an application in this community for 5 stories. I know many of you are thinking, oh my God, 5 stories. Can I, please let me take that if that's all I have to take. But that's the real small community, right? Is that they have a different mindset. So, but certainly I expect someone to come forward. In fact, a group just came forward with a 4-story suggestion to the community association recently, which will be requiring an OPA for Manotick, and that's just for 4 stories. So it's a big change, but we also value what's around these rural villages. We value the fact that they are, kind of isolated and in a rural setting surrounded by agricultural land. If we don't see that growth within the boundaries, we're going to have to expand them. Richmond's slated to take 5,000 units in the next 50 years. They've got 2,000 units now, 5,000 more units. I mean, it's a huge change, and it's not going to look the same. And that's tough for many to take, but it's no different than what every other community is also faced with. And I think as long as we can lead in a fashion to say every community will take its share, that type of balance will help us get to the point of where we need to be by 2050, and that we aren't looking at additional urban boundary expansions in 2030 and 2040 and 2050. We've seen the map. We had a map, the Gold Belt. It showed all the lands that could actually absorb the 2 million people that are going to come to this city between now and 2100. We have land to grow, but is that sustainable? Can we actually do that and have a city that we want to live in? So it's important conversation for sure. So Alain, if you have to go, I appreciate that. I understand that. Thank you for being here tonight. Corlelia, go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I will sign off. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. You're just on mute there, Corlelia.
Yes, you were talking about Manotick. I'm a Manotick resident. So if you don't allow the 4th floor on the main street and to intensify that, we already have 2 retirement homes. You have to attract young people and young couple to work, an office. The problem is the services. That's the only problem that we have.
That's right. Yeah, that's fair. And that's one of the tough things too, is that, every time we talk about, because Manotick's in that rural transit area, average Manotick home will pay around $200 a year for transit. Why? Because they don't really get transit. But if we brought urban transit out to, if we brought Manotick into the urban transit rate, now I'm talking about a near $1,000 tax increase for every home in Manotick. So you have to need the demand has to meet that, has to be there in order to bring the supply. The one benefit is that within likely a year or two, LRT station at Riverside South, that's a 5-minute ride. That's a game changer for the South End. The residents of Greeley right now don't pay a cent toward transit, not a cent. They only pay for the paratransport rate. Now think about that. They're going to be 5 minutes on the doorstep from an LRT station that can get them anywhere in the city, mostly. Not Lansdowne, but can get them anywhere in the city.
Yeah, but we need to attract young people too.
Yeah, that's right. And so when we're seeing more applications for apartment style rentals in the village core. We still want to see 3 stories on Main Street, but tucked in behind that, there's space. We call it the gaps in the Manotick secondary plan. There's space there to go higher. It's similar to Preston. So on Preston, we wanted to keep the feel on Preston to be that sort of that old community feel with the restaurants and the stores, but we wanted the density there too, because one, that density is going to feed those businesses to make sure those businesses can survive. That's the issue we need in Manotick. We need density to support the 120 businesses that we have there
To
today.
support the commercial.
Absolutely. But so on Preston, we tucked I say tucked, it's big buildings, but in behind. So they're in behind Preston. So they still feed into the community, but they don't take away from the design of Preston itself. So that's the same idea we see on Manotick Main Street. We want to have that Main Street village feel, but know that we need to be able to put the population in the village as well, within the core. Not that they have to drive from one side of the village into the middle to get there, but actually right there so they can get out of their houses and walk and be patrons. Right now, some of our restaurants, we have restaurants that the biggest patrons come from Barrhaven, Riverside South, down into Manotick. But we want those people in our village, because once the downtown core gets defined in Barrhaven, we could lose that business in Manotick. So we need to have that to make sure we're sustainable too. And so every community faces that same idea. I'm just using Manotick as a bit of a microcosm, but which you understand because you're there. But I know because I was born and raised there. But yeah, I appreciate it's the conversation. Is a very I actually really enjoy this committee because I love these conversations. I think it's great balance between, especially with Councillor Leeper, Councillor Kavanaugh here, to have that balance with councillors, members of the public, with David here from GOBA, that type of thing, and staff as well. I find these are very I enjoy them. I really enjoy them. So I appreciate the opportunity to be chair of this committee. So I don't know if anyone else has any comments or questions. I don't see any hands raised. No? Oh, go ahead, Mohammed.
Yeah, just again, would like to get some clarity on the kind of the upcoming approval process. So the draft is released in its entirety of the OP August 20th. And again, the fact that it's released in its entirety, I agree with Carolyn, it's important because often you'll read something, you're not sure how you would necessarily respond because you understand that other parts are still in progress. So your response is tempered, or it's also a good thing to have, because while that other section of the draft that's still in progress has a chance to respond to feedback. So there's pros and cons to that process, but ultimately we all know that you can really only respond to something when you full picture, when you can kind of see everything together. And so that's released in its entirety on August 20th. Public has a chance for 3 weeks, is it, to review. Again, I will note that it's at the peak of the summer. That's when everyone is, it's a tough time for everyone to kind of really be focused on something as significant as this. But they have 3 weeks to respond, and then it goes up to the Committee of Economic Development and Rural Affairs. Sorry if I got the term.
Yeah, it's the joint meeting of planning and then agricultural rural affairs. That's right.
Okay, so that's in kind of mid-September. Is there even time to collate or kind of collect all the feedback that's been received, incorporate into the draft that's going in front of this committee? Or is expectation that they're going to review it without knowledge of that feedback to the first comprehensive draft that's been released? Is there, where do you find time to respond to that in the draft and resubmit to the committee?
So Charmaine, I don't know if you want to take that. I mean, ultimately, I think what Charmaine was saying was that earlier that we're kind of injecting an interim process, an interim report in this normal process. Normally what would happen is that you do the full report, you put the report out there for comments, staff, it's like a development application. Staff come back with the comments, they evaluate them, they produce that final report goes to committee. And then if there's additional comments that they happen there and things maybe can change on the floor, we've seen that before. We saw what happened in February of this year, where we saw changes on the floor of committee and council to major documents that had been worked through, right? That can still happen. Sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse, but that can still occur. So in this case, you have this final report that the questions will come in, the comments will come in, staff will have a chance to see them. We'll have a chance to see them, hopefully members to council, and you could see that discussion and change happen. But there's not a similar second process similar to the first one. This is another step in that process where those comments will come in response to, but there won't be that second opportunity for staff to go away and embed them into a third draft kind of thing?
Thank you, Chair. So what will happen is that's why we're getting comments. Even we've just released the citywide and we're receiving feedback already. And so we don't want to leave it to the end. So we'll receive the feedback, and if that feedback is something that the planners feel can be incorporated and changes are made, they will make them. And so the final legislated open house, which is the end of August, at that point, all the changes that we've heard up until that point, even as we're releasing them, we're not getting all the feedback and then making the changes. As things come in, we feed all the feedback to the planners. Every week, I give my team gives a week saying, this is what we heard this week, take it away, look at what pieces it is, where it's adapted, and makes the changes. So is it from the labor intensive? This way it takes off that labor intensive, because we're not waiting for, I didn't draw up 1,500 comments on them and say, now as they come in, I give it, that's what they're looking for. And we're prepared to do this. I get it. It's summer for us as well. And so I understand that. So doing it the best that we can. When we go to the open house, the legislated meeting, it's legislated. So there's all parameters around it. At that point, we will release it. And I'm hoping prior to the legislative meeting, I'm doing it the fastest we can. And before that, we can put it out to the public. And at that meeting, they will once again saying, this was the interim as we heard it reports. And now these are additional changes that we've made, if there is any changes or the different pieces. So as we go, it's a very fluid process to ensure that we get the feedback and make the necessary changes. And then we do go to the joint committee September 13th, 14th, and 15th. And at that time, again, it's it's opportunity right up into that time. There's an opportunity to provide feedback, and also the delegations happen at those committees as well. So there, again, another opportunity at the joint committee. We have booked, it will be the 13th. We've booked extra days just in case there are delegations. Again, we take that feedback and incorporate as we go.
If there are motions that happen, generally what we do in a big document like this, if there are motions that come forward at the joint meeting, we'll hold on to those, and we won't bring those we'll bring those directly to council for a vote. We often don't vote on those at those big joint meetings. We bring them together, kind of give everyone a chance to look at them and understand them, and then we bring them to council for a vote of full council.
So thank you for explaining the process. It's very helpful.
All right. Someone else. Oh, well, Leanne had your hand up, but I think you didn't want to say anything.
I did have my hand up. I just wanted to add to both what you and Charmaine have already outlined, but this is kind of the reason why that people are giving everyone the heads up notice now. I think everybody empathizes with the timing in the summer, but it's hopeful that people will mark their calendars now that you've got a month's of notice that the next draft is coming, for people to pay attention to it when it does come. And Chair, I was also just going to indicate from the last OP that yes, and you outlined about the issue with the motion. So it's never over until it's over, until council approves. So there's a significant amount of time yet from the time August draft is released until council's meeting. And as I recall from the last OP that I was involved in, we were right up until the minute council started, there were changes still being made. So I just want everyone to be hopeful that staff are always paying attention to the feedback, regardless of when it comes in. Thanks.
And just, can I add to that? Then it goes to the ministry when additional changes can be made by the ministry. So it's our draft approved council new official plan, but then it goes to the ministry for final approval. And that can take, between 4 and 9 months. So around 6 months. So we don't have necessarily the last say. We have what we think is a city, but then it does go to the ministry for the final approval. And there still could be changes from the ministry.
The minister's a good friend of mine, so I'll be texting him any changes that you want to make, Mohammed. So, and anything I don't get that I want in the OP, I'm just going to text the minister. Hey, say, can you just slide this in here? That'd be great. Thanks. I take advantage of my relationships. Okay. Any other comments, or should I let you all go and enjoy the rest of this. What day is it? Tuesday? Is it Tuesday today? Okay, good. All right, thank you all. I appreciate our next, hold on, this is an official meeting. I can't just sit there and sign off. Notice the motion, none, inquiries, none, other business, none, adjournments. Carried?
Okay.
Carried. Our next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, October 6th, 2021. So I'll see you all then.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
everyone.
Thanks,
Good night.
everyone.
Have a good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.